Okay, I've made a few of these and I realized that I haven't got it quite right just yet. So we're going to do one more of these guys on managing file paths and just try to help you guys get the file paths right for the way that I have set up these lessons. So first of all, what I'm going to show you here to start with is that just to fix concepts, I'm working in the RHD data import export repository. Okay, so from that repository, as we've talked about in a couple of videos and at a couple points during the workshop, right, the most efficient way to get these resources into an RStudio workspace, into an RStudio project, and just be able to work with them is to come in here to GitHub, fork this repository. Okay, after you fork the repository, it will create a version of this repository in your GitHub account. You can go here and you can clone the GitHub repository, right? Once you've forked it, then you've cloned it, you can go into RStudio and you can do RStudio new project from version control, and you can paste in the URL of the project and it will set up the project, okay, in your RStudio version the same way that it is set up, the same way that I have set it up, okay? And so what that will mean for you most likely is that when you come down here, so I'm now working in the skill 1, okay, so within the project, I'm in the skills subdirectory, I'm in the import spreadsheet data.rmd file here, and you'll come to this line where you're going to read a CSV file, and it's going to read a CSV from the data subdirectory, okay? And using the here package and the here function from the here package, if you've done the GitHub fork, get clone, RStudio new project process, right, this should work for you just fine. We've talked about a couple different ways that you may need to modify if you are not using that process, if you're not using that GitHub get RStudio workflow, you may need to modify some things in here to get this read.csv to find the file that you're looking to import. So what I need to cover right now is something that Aaron Steiner covered in the help session. But I want to make sure that we have this on a separate video for folks who need this resource as a reference. Okay, what I want to draw your attention to here is that this skill 1 import spreadsheet data, okay, this is in the skills subdirectory of this project. Now, what I would like you to notice is that this is an R-Markdown file. If I go down here in the console and I ask for the working directory, getwd will tell me what the current working directory is, right? It will give me the root directory for the project, RHD data import export. However, if I were to come up here in the Markdown document itself, I'll insert a code chunk, and I will do the same, get working directory method within the .rmd file. That's going to print me a different working directory, and that's because these are Markdown documents and our notebooks are their own separate environments. They're their own separate things, and so they're going to redirect the working directory to whatever directory they live inside of, right? And so we can see here in the R console, the working directory is the skills subdirectory for the project, but we can see up here that within the .rmd, so within the R Markdown, it is looking for files relative to the location that the R Markdown file that we're running lives inside of. Okay, This is one of the reasons why I use the here package, because here always defaults to the root directory, so I can save R-Markdowns inside of subdirectories within a project, and I can use here to create the file paths that I need to access resources in other subdirectories of the project. What this will mean for you guys is that, right, if you want to do if you try to set the working directory to, say, the data subdirectory, doing a set wd, right, that may reset the working directory here in the console, right? So let me try that. Set wd. Okay, so I'm going to try to reset the working directory to look inside the data folder. Okay. I'll do a get wd. Right, so the working directory is now inside data. Okay, but if I come up here inside of the Markdown document and I try to do read CSV Spotify top 50 CSV. Okay, if the working directory was really set to the data subdirectory for the project, this should work because this Spotify top 50.csv. Yep, it's right here. It's inside of this data subdirectory. Okay, so this shouldn't be problematic. However, it is problematic, and it's problematic for exactly the reason that I just illustrated, because you'll see that we've reset the working directory, and I'll just emphasize that again with a get wd. Right, the working directory should be the data subdirectory, but if I run a get wd from within the R-Markdown environment, okay, so I'm going to run this. The working directory is still the skills subdirectory. Okay, so all that means is that if you're going to change the path here, okay, so if you've set your project up differently from the way that I've set my project up, and so perhaps the Spotify top 50 lives in a different place than the data subdirectory of the root directory of the project, or the project directory is somehow different from the way that I've set these projects up, and you're going to replace this line here, you won't be able to simply come into the console and say set wd and give it a path. You'll need to make those changes here in the R-Markdown document, or the document won't run. So knitting the document won't execute successfully for you if you choose to do it